So I'm Fidan Limani. I work as a researcher for the ZWA, and occasionally my research interests include both semantic web and linked data, but also I'm involved with FAIR principles and FAIR digital objects as part of the projects at the institution. So I wanted to point out at some of the potentials from combining these two in reality. So for FAIR digital objects, which is picking up steam, it's quite popular these days. It can be thought of as just the new iteration of these publishing and packaging trends in the scholarly communication, right? So it's not an individual items publication, but it's rather the idea was to aggregate all relevant items in one object and then digitally share it amongst the community and interested parties. So for FAIR digital object is just another, maybe the new kid on the block, another iteration in this evolution. It can be described as a self-contained typed machine actionable data package. So the focus here is on machine actionability. And if you can see from the figure there, it might be, I don't know what the resolution is, but mainly basically the idea is that it has several layers of which, some offer you identification so that you know which resource you want, others describe it, then you have the raw data, and maybe the new thing which is there is this type specific operations, which if you come across the data set, at least you should be able to say which operation you are able to conduct there. Of course, this is a specification process still in progress. And then, but what's important for this context of SWIB and libraries is that at least from two implementation approaches so far, one is linked data based. And why is it so? Because linked data have been adopted when implementing other similar aggregation models, if you can call them like that. And specifically with FAIR digital objects, it overlaps. There's an overlap between the FAIR principles and those of the 5-star LOD schemas. As you can see in the table, we don't have a perfect match for all the FAIR principles, which are on the left-hand side with the 5-star schema, which are across, but still that's definitely a good starting point. So with two examples quickly, so there's the FDO framework proposed by the FDO forum, a working group from FDO forum, which tries to identify a minimal set of attributes, constraints, and features which these FDO instance should adhere to. And they also have the documentation there, and then the image here is not meant to describe all the aspects of the model, but the idea is that there is a model based on linked data and semantic web technology, which tries to address this with a few use cases already being proposed. The other one is RowCrate, which is again a combination of linked data standards. And you can see from their website the different standards that they rely on, such as the RDF. The serialization in this case is JSON LD, but they also use the provenance ontology, describing based on Dublin core and using ORCID and allowing web annotation data models. And if you follow with any of these links, you will see some examples of how they are trying to represent something which we can call a FAIR digital object, a digital object which is according to these adheres to these FAIR principles. Of course, the idea here was just to bring the attention to these to the possibility of these two aspects being combined because of the nature of the conference, but the work is by no means done, as there are challenges, because as we saw in the table before, there's no perfect match between what the linked data 5-star schema demands and what the FAIR principles demand. So of course there has to be some constraints and best practices identified so that we can enable this. There are, of course, pros and cons to adopting linked data in this case, and with a maybe stronger suit of adopting linked data being that the RDF model inherently includes some features which map nicely to the FAIR digital object, such as using identifiers for the entities or resources there, or having the way to semantically describe the resources by ontologies, for instance, which can be reused in other context, use cases, communities, but also can be extended, which is a standard practice in the linked open data community. And then some of the cons, of course, there are having many standards, vocabularies, ontologies, and so on could potentially hinder the adoption because it might be overwhelming to certain communities, or it might require that we need more effort in order to bring all these differences into an interoperable way somehow. Maybe another interesting point there would be that in linked data, we rely on URIs, but when it comes to FAIR principles used in FAIR digital objects, that can be any PID. It doesn't have to be URI or other identifier. And just finally, quickly, we do explore with the concept of FAIR principles and FDOs in our projects at the ZPV as well, in sometimes less based on linked data, in some others times adopting it more. So thanks for the opportunity, and then open to discuss this in the chat and in other channels. Thanks.